In this video, I want to show you how you can use a Bamboo Tools adjustable square or rectangular mold. It is a four-sided mold that is completely adjustable. It has little clamps like this, and the adjustments allow you to completely slide and adjust these lengths of the sides to be anywhere from about 14.5 inches on down. These do have beveled edges, as you can see, so it creates a depth of, what is that, about 1.5 inches deep. Now, the way to do this is when you are adjusting this, it just has a screw mechanism here. You will line up your corners so they're matching. So here I have like about 7.5 and 7.5 on the short sides, and here I have 14 inches on the long sides. So just line those up, and then just double check it, make sure it looks okay, which that looks to be about right. I am going to use a wear board that I'm going to put underneath this to begin. So I have the ability to pick it up once I set it in the mold. Now I'm going to use the slab, which I have already rolled out. I used the slab roller and I rolled it out, and I did compress it on both sides prior to the video, but again, you could see that video. When you pick up a large slab like this, you want to spread your fingers out, and you want to kind of gently drape it in. Now, I do have another video on using the Bamboo Tools octagonal mold. This particular one, this again is the four-sided. It's really quite beautiful, the results that you can get. And I'll show you a couple of pieces and some of my student pieces here. So when you go to drape this in, you want to just be gentle with your draping, trying not to create any finger marks. And here I'm just using a little rib to rib down in there. You can certainly create a flat edge up here, like the mold has the flat edge on top. And of course, you could drape this with all sorts of textures. I am going to do something with this later, so I'm not really going to do the textures right now. I'll do another video with that. Once I've eased it into the mold with the stiffer yellow rib, then I'm doing final smoothing with a red rib. Now that I have the form ribbed, I am going to cut off some excess here. Now, students, this is the sort of thing that you could put in a pug mill, but if you don't have access to the pug mill, just take a squirt bottle, spritz down the scraps generously, and then put it back in the bag before it dries. Now here I'm just going to trim this just a little bit more so I don't have such a large flange. I'm using a ruler because I want to get it straight and even. And the last thing that I want to do is I do want to round my corners. This is a very simple trick to round a corner. You could take a round object. I'm just going to take a little round template that I have these templates cut out in my classroom for my students to use. And as long as it's nice and even and round, and you line it up with both sides, you should get a nice even round corner. Now something like this could have a foot ring on it, or it could sit flat on a table. Okay, and that is the first steps in creating a slab tray with the adjustable mold. You can see that it's kind of sticking through a little bit underneath there. I'm going to let this get leather hard, and then I'll come back and I'll show you how I can finish that off. And here I decided to trim off a little bit more. After I had done it, I realized it was bigger than I wanted. Now that my piece is leather hard, I can easily pop it off the mold without it flexing, and I can just set the mold aside. And the first thing that I want to do to clean it is I want to really clean the edges. And for this, I'm going to use a notched card. I have another video where I show how to make these very simply from like a credit card or say a hotel key. I just cut a nice round notch in it, and if you pull it along the edge, it cleans it. You can also use a Sureform. Now the Sureform is more like a cheese grater, and that will even it up if you have some large differences. But the notched rib allows you to just kind of take a curve, knock a little bit off of the top and the bottom part of the edge, so it curves the edge, so it's not very sharp. Make sure that if you're using notched rib that your clay is indeed leather hard. If it's real soft, you're going to have some issues. And then here I'm just leveling the bottom and ribbing the interior a bit. And now I'm going to start to lay out the design that I want to do. And for this, I'm just using a pencil, and then I'm going to be carving with what is a miniature ribbon tool. I'll put a link in the video for that. It's a little triangular angled cutting ribbon tool, a Kemper tool. And here I'm creating like a little valley, if you will. I'm going to have highs and lows. And I'm just going to continue to do this, and you can see the evolution of it. Now I have everything carved, and I have cleaned it with a damp paintbrush. I'm just going to level the rim, level the bottom, and this is the result. It's going to be key that I dry this very, very slowly because fast drying can cause a rim to crack. I will flip it upside down on its rim so it will protect the rim from drying out too quickly. And that is it, ready to dry. And here's the result of the bisque-fired rectangular plate where I added swirly texture to it. And now I want to prep it for glazing. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to be waxing the bottom. You can see I've taken a pencil mark. Since I don't have a particular foot, I want to make sure that I'm waxing about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch up the sides. So I've kind of drawn a little pencil line there, kind of gauging where I need to wax. But before I wax, I am going to add a little bit of glaze into the letters there, because I would like to glaze the portion of my name and have glaze in that so it's readable. So I'm just going to take a brush, put some glaze over the initials, or over my name, and then I'm going to sponge, but attempt to leave it in the carved letters. There we go. Now that I have the glaze in there, then I'm going to go ahead and wax over the bottom part where I want the glaze to avoid being. Now, of course, be very careful when you wax. because if you make a mistake or you drip on your piece, it is very difficult to clean it off well, and it can really slow up your entire process of glazing. One of the easy ways to get mistaken wax off if you do accidentally glaze something that you don't intend, and if you wax something you didn't intend to, I often will tell my students, let's just stick it back in a bisque kiln and we'll re-bisque fire it. Because, of course, if you bisque fire something, the wax will burn off, because it burns off at a low temperature. I mean, it doesn't even have to go as high as a bisque firing, but it's a nice way that you can just make for sure that there's no wax on there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I'm just going to allow that to dry before I dip. So as I'm allowing the wax on the bottom of the tray to dry, I'm just going to whisk up my glazes, or my glaze, I should say. I'm just using one. This is Antique Jade. It's a Laguna glaze. I normally use Coyotes, but I still have some old holdouts of some old glazes that I used to use. You want to make sure that it is very consistently mixed up, that it's even from top to bottom. Now, I am not going to be able to submerge the entire thing. I'm probably going to go like 2/3 and 2/3. So I'm going to go down as far as I can go. And then you can see how the wax is going to allow that to kind of sheet off. I just kind of encourage it sometimes. I'll wipe it more precisely when it's dry. And then when this side is totally dry, I will turn it over and I will do the other side. But I have to let that sit for a few minutes. When it stops dripping, then I can set it back down. Okay, it's dry enough that I can handle this side, and I'm going to bring it down to make sure that it just touches. I don't need that much of an overlap. And I'll let that drip. And then I'll set it down when it stops dripping. Now that the glaze is dry on this, I can take my sponge and sponge off the excess glaze that's on the back, making sure again that it's up from the bottom about 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch in height. Depending on your glazes, you may have some glazes that are runnier than others. You need to know your glazes as to how far up you have to go. Now, I'm not concerned about the glaze in the letters because it's up inside there. It usually is never a problem, for me at least. And here is the finished final tray after it came out of the glaze firing. And that's how you make a rectangular tray.